And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, February 3rd. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into all that, just want to remind you guys, tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat. If you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast, makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So let's get into what we're going to discuss for today. So a couple of Super Bowl related topics to open up the show. Well, the first one is really to just talk about the fact that it is officially Super Bowl week. We have made it. We will have media day this week with the players meeting with the media, and obviously there'll be some things that they talk about that I'll have to highlight at some point. But we have made it the last week of football, a build up to a game, and it's sad, but we'll talk about the game all week, and we'll start off the first show of this week by doing so. We'll talk about Andy Reid as well, talking about how they're not focused on, the Chiefs are not focused on a three-peat. They are focused on just this game, so we'll get into that. And then a few other things. We'll talk about Sam Darnold, and supposedly his stock has dropped. Obviously, he was going to be a free agent, or possibly could be a free agent, depending on what the Vikings do with him. And his price may have dropped because of how he performed the last couple games of the season, so we'll get into that. We'll talk about Russell Wilson, his recent comments, his desire to stay in Pittsburgh. We'll talk about that. And then also we'll talk about Cam Newton, his take on his MVP versus having a Super Bowl ring. So let's get into the first topic, which is just talking about Super Bowl week. So that's right, we've made it. Like I said, Philadelphia Eagles against the Kansas City Chiefs, a matchup that we saw a couple years ago. Now, that's a game that I will highlight during the week, probably tomorrow, to kind of revisit that, how that game went. But that was a very entertaining Super Bowl, and I feel like this is going to be the same kind of game. Well, not exactly the same, but it is going to be an entertaining game. Now, a lot of fans are not very excited about it because it's something that we already saw, and I understand that, but I do think when you take a step back and you look at these two teams, we got the two best teams in football going at it. Now, when you look at the Chiefs, I know record-wise, yes, but did they play like that all year, offensively especially? Not necessarily, but the Chiefs, they know how to win tight games, and they did that a lot this past season. And it could come down to being another close game in the Super Bowl. And then on the other side, you got the Eagles. And, they took a little bit to get going. Their defense wasn't great to start out the year, but it really came together, and it's become one of the better defenses in the league. And Vic Fangio has done a great job with that defense, and Howie Roseman did a nice job building this defense back up after last year. Zach Bond, the linebacker, he's been talked about constantly, an underrated signing. And then obviously a couple of young corners and a couple defensive backs in the secondary with DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. They have really done a nice job rebuilding that. And then, of course, Saquon Barkley coming out of the backfield. And, the storylines going in, obviously, actually, Saquon Barkley and Cooper DeJean, I think their birthdays are going to fall on the Super Bowl. So, we'll see what they bring. Does Cooper DeJean get a pick in this game? Saquon Barkley, I think, will perform well. Now, I don't think he's going to have a game like he's had in these playoffs because I think the Chiefs, they're going to be ready. This is going to be the best defense that the Eagles are probably going to see in the postseason. And, the Packers, they held them down a little bit. Their offense, the Packers couldn't score, but Packers defense, I thought, did a good job against their offense for the most part. I mean, Barkley did have that one big run at the end, and he did have over 100 yards, but like I said, I thought the Packers did well. The Rams, they got to Jalen Hurts. They got after him, but again, they let Barkley run wild against them. The Commanders' defense just never had a chance. But I think with the Chiefs, this is the best defense that the Eagles are going to face. Now, I think the Chiefs are a little bit susceptible to the run, so that's something to keep an eye on. And the Eagles, I think, can exploit that because, we talk about the Chiefs' defense, but at the same time, you look at the Eagles' offensive line. The Chiefs' D-line is going to have their hands full with that offensive line. And Barkley is definitely going to have some big runs in this game coming up. But looking at some of the other storylines, I mean, again, it's a repeat from a couple years ago. Teams are a little bit different since then. Andy Reid is coaching against his former team. There's no Jason Kelce on the other side this time, so we can't say it's going to be the Kelce Bowl. But a lot of the talk this week, and we'll get into it in the next segment, is just the three-peat. Chiefs being the first team to ever three-peat. And that's something that is very intriguing going in. It's something that I've kind of just looked at and said, I want to see that. Just because, maybe it's the only time I get a chance to see a team three-peat. And if it's going to be any team, it's going to be this one. The Patriots never three-peated. Now, they won 3 championships in 2 separate times, but they never three-peated. So I want to see that. And then obviously, with Patrick Mahomes, he's going for his 4th Super Bowl championship. I mean, and he's only been a starter for, going on 7 years now. It's unbelievable. And I said the same thing last year. Like, a lot of this is stuff that I said last year. That this is unbelievable. Mahomes in just a short time. I mean, look at what kind of career he's been able to put together. Because what else can you say? Every year he's just continuing to build his resume. And, I think we'll talk about, we'll revisit the Brady Mahomes debate because that's something that's continued to be had. Now, obviously, I'm not as passionate about it as other people because, you have the Brady people that are going to say, yeah, he's never going to be able to catch him because Brady beat him in the playoffs twice, but they don't provide any context to it. They just say, oh, Brady's 2-0, but they don't go into depth on why Brady's was better in those games, why Brady's teams won those games. They don't do that. I think even with this Super Bowl, if Mahomes is able to win it, still got a little bit to go before he catches Brady. But he's on the path to do it. But we'll have to wait and see. And we talk about quarterbacks. This is a big game for Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts played well in the last Super Bowl. He did. Now, he did turn the ball over, which was costly. But he played well. And I think he's going to play well in this game. This is going to be an entertaining game. Even though, if you're not excited about it, I get it. But this is going to be a good Super Bowl, what we have here. And I can't wait for it. And, who's going to be the guy to step up? Maybe there's an underrated player that we don't talk about at all that makes a big play in this game. Because you go back to the other Super Bowl, and, the Chiefs, they had Kadarius Toney run back that punt return. That was a big play in the game. Nick Bolton, like I said, he got the scoop and score off of Jalen Hurts. And Mahomes was banged up in that Super Bowl. And now he's going to be healthy for this one. You know, who is going to be the guy to step up? And can the Eagles get after Mahomes? Now that Mahomes this time around is healthy. You know, the Eagles have the advantage when it comes to the offensive line because the Chiefs, you know, they kind of had to shift their offensive line a little bit because of injuries. You know, Joe Tooney is now playing tackle, and he's usually an interior lineman. You know, are they going to be able to hold up against this Eagles pass rush? Brandon Graham might be playing in this game, and if he does, I mean, it's going to be on a limited snap count. But we'll see. You know, and look at the Chiefs. They went out and they brought back some guys that know the system. You know, Isaiah Pacheco goes down. They bring back Kareem Hunt. And Kareem Hunt, I thought, had his best game of the year against the Bills in the AFC Championship game. And Juju Smith-Schuster had a couple of big catches. And he was on that team from a couple of years ago that won the Super Bowl. Kareem Hunt was on the Chiefs from 17 to 18, and, you know, the off-the-field incident happened, and the Chiefs let him go. But then he came back after he was with Cleveland, and he was good for them this year. But like I said, I thought he had a burst to him that I thought he didn't have all year in that game against the Bills in the AFC Championship game. The Chiefs, they just go and they bring guys back. Like, they even brought McCole Hardman back, too, last year. I mean, he's not going to be playing in this game, but, you know, they just bring guys back that know the system. And it works. So, yeah, it's exciting. It's an exciting time. Final game of the year is coming up, and obviously we'll talk about it all week. But these are just my thoughts. Some more thoughts on the game, even though some of it's kind of the same. But, I mean, how many times can you talk about the same game? You know, so. But let me know what you guys think about this game. How excited are you for it? How amped up are you for it? If you're amped up for it at all, let me know. We are going to take our first break of the show now, and then when we come back, we'll continue our discussion with the Super Bowl. But we'll talk about Andy Reid's mindset, how he views this game going in. How does he view the three-peat? We'll talk about that when we come back. So with that being said, stick around. And we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.